A few days ago on this channel, I uploaded a video entitled 5 Signs My Marriage Should Never Have Happened. I did this in lieu of a plain old storytime video. I didn't want to come across as a bitter, twisted old lady just talking about my relationship, my marriage, my divorce, emotional abuse, and how it changed me for the worse and then, fortunately, for the better. Instead, I wanted more of an instructional approach, a video that explained to you guys what some of the signs were so that in your own personal relationships, you could look for what wasn't working. And if those things were non-negotiables, you could not do what I did, which is sign paperwork and make it even more official. Making it more official, of course, makes it even harder to get out of and harder for people to understand why you need to do that in the first place. I'm Linda. This is Linda's World, and this is part 2, as promised. 5 signs I knew my marriage was over. These 5 signs, once again, this instructional video out there for you ladies and gentlemen, in addition to a little bit of a story time, starts right now. Before I get into the 5 signs that I knew my marriage was over, I'd like to say a few words if I may. First and foremost, if you haven't seen the previous video, part 1, 5 signs that I shouldn't have gotten married, well, I'm going to leave the link to that video in the description box below this one. You can watch each video independent from each other, but I do suggest that together they make quite a united and complete story, so I'll just leave that information with you. The next thing is a thank you. A thank you to the people who did watch, and particularly to the people who left me feedback suggesting that they got it, and they understood, and it was instructional for them, that they're going to look for these things in their previous relationships, current relationships, future relationships. That means the world to me. That's literally the reason why I sit on my floor and film this stuff, so thank you guys very much. Finally, I'd like to say that Linda's World is 2 subscribers. 2 subscribers away from 300. So, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button right there down below this video, and hit the notification bell as well, so you don't miss out on my new videos. Alright, let's dive back into the decade that was the 2010s, and the time that I spent with my ex-husband. Alright, now in the previous video, I outlined stories that occurred in 2012 and 13. The reason for that is because that's when we knew each other and we got married in 2013. We met in 2010, got married in 2013, and split up at the very, very end of 2017. So all of the events in this particular list will take place at the very, very end of 2017. Okay, so the first sign that I knew my marriage was over happened the day my father died. My father died on September 11th, 2017, and there's a very, very, very old video. I think it's maybe like the 3rd video I ever made that outlines the story of my father's illness and death and the bereavement process and what my father and I's relationship was and whatnot. And if you want to go creep back and look at my old videos, go ahead. The story was sound, even though the video quality might be very poor. In any case, I called my ex-husband, obviously, the day it happened. Now, I called him not just to report the fact that my father was dead, but because we had a bit of a situation. You see, the thing was that my ex-husband was in the process of selling his home in a town in Long Island that he no longer lives in, and he was going to move to another town in California. Now, this might sound really weird to you guys. You might say, but Linda, if he was leaving the state, like, I don't understand. You know, I understand. We were very untraditional and very unorthodox, and I was actually really happy for him that he was leaving his home and moving to California. The thing is that he was very trapped in his house in many ways, and he was trapped financially, and he was trapped by some memories, and he was trapped in a lot of anxiety for different reasons, and it wasn't going well for him, and he needed this change. And I used to take the Long Island Railroad every Saturday night to go see him, so what's the difference if I just saved it up and got on a plane to California instead to see him? I'm a California enthusiast, it's all good, okay? However, this is what went down. So, my father died. I received my phone call in the middle of the night. So, the next morning, I called him and told him what happened. The next day, September 12th, was the day that he was to be flying to California to look for homes to buy, okay? He was selling his home, he put it up on the market in August, and he had scheduled a real estate-based trip to California to go look for where he was to live next and go camping, because that's something that he did, and you know, all that. So therefore, what I'm basically taking a million years to tell you is that he didn't attend the funeral. We spoke about it. on FaceTime. And and of course he acted appropriately about the death of my father. He didn't do anything wrong there. But it was suggested to him that he like rearrange his ticket to California and come and do what was right. Now, this is kind of a double sign. Double sign in that A, he did not do that. He maintained his trip and went to California to look for new homes. Found one, actually. And B, that I wasn't unhappy that he did that. Okay? Now, you may be saying, Linda, I don't understand. Well, basically, it looks like this. When I suggest these signs that my marriage is over, I'm not just suggesting times that he behaved like an asshole. It was also times that I myself didn't feel interested anymore. You know, I'm a person too, and I have feelings, and like, I proudly announce that like part of the blame lay with me in that I was not interested in pursuing the relationship any further. Like, I was done. So when he suggested that he wasn't changing his ticket, that he was going to go on September 12th as scheduled to California to meet with his real estate agent, look for new homes for himself, and then camp out like by the redwoods and whatnot. Like, I wasn't unhappy. I was actually relieved because I said, oh great, because I was about to embark on a 3-day process of funeral, and you know, being with my mother, who's, you know, obviously I needed to, you know, do that and for us to be the way we are together, you know, like by ourselves, she and I, in our friendship, because that's what my mother is to me, is my friend. And I needed to mourn my dad, with whom I also had a friendship relationship, and to see extended family and do all the things, you know, and be incredibly tired because of long drives and whatnot. I mean, anyone who's ever been through a funeral, assuming Christianity in that way that we do it, like, you know, it's taxing. And so I just kind of didn't have room to be like making sure he was okay. You know, I didn't want to do what we normally would have to do if we were together at one of my family's things. You know, go find him a Starbucks, you know, make sure that, you know, he had like money for gas. You know, go pick out his clothing and make sure that he wasn't offended by the fact that I was talking to another human being that wasn't him, and stuff like that. That's what we used to do at family occasions that were for fun. So I sure as hell wasn't about to do that at my father's funeral, you know? So I could not have been more overjoyed that he got on that plane instead of putting on a black suit, you know? And that's a problem. That's a sign that your marriage is over. You know, and I share responsibility with that one. The second sign also appeared in this on this channel once before, so I'm going to not tell the entire story. I'm going to make it brief, but I'm going to tell you why it was a sign. So you see, a couple of months ago, I don't remember how far back, I was doing a lot of story times at this channel, and I told the story of how my marriage ended with one sentence, right? And I will tell you what that sentence was because it's sign number 2. So my father had been dead for, I want to say, perhaps 6 weeks. I don't know, like something like that. It was like around, it was somewhere, not Halloween, not Thanksgiving. So we were in his house on Sunday, and I was putting my act together to leave, you know, putting my shit in a bag and putting my coat on and whatnot. And we're going to go leave the house because I had to catch the train home, right? And so he was there, his daughter was there, and we were going to go to Starbucks, and I was going to get on my usual train, the 2:25. Well, as we were doing this, we were complaining about the fact that it was Sunday. You know, my stepdaughter was like, oh yeah, you know, school, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, me too. And we were talking about how like Sunday sucks and stuff like that. And just in general. And I talked about how tomorrow I have a lot to do. Okay. My ex-husband said, what you could possibly have to complain about is beyond me. Now, in a previous Storytime video, I explained in depth what this meant. And so the abridged version right here for this video, and the purpose of it being a sign, is that so out of touch was he with what I was feeling, so out of touch was he with what he was supposed to say anyway, so out of touch was he, that this could not continue. When you're standing, and he knew all of my work problems, and he knew what I was going to be facing the next day on Monday, and so I complained about it to him before, and he never took my side. You know, he always seemed to make it my fault that what was happening at my job was happening to me, and that's a whole other story time. But the fact that he stood there, zipping up his ridiculous orange jacket that he never washed, and saying to me that what I could possibly have to complain about is beyond him, when I literally was going to a job that I couldn't stand, that and having, you know, financial troubles and boss troubles, you know, just basic, like, the troubles of work, you know, but a little extra because I had a situation going on. And the fact that my dad had been dead for about 6 weeks, that my mother and best friend was a wreck, and that I was a wreck, and that it was all too much, and that, I mean, for God's sake, you know what I'm saying? So, like, what could I possibly have to complain about? The fact that I'm still married to you. That's as bitter as I'm going to get in this video. Now, my third sign seems sort of silly, okay? I'm going to say something to you now that you're going to think, what the heck is that? David S. Pumpkins. Now, okay, here's the thing. I'm a huge SNL enthusiast. I have never lived in a universe where there wasn't a Saturday Night Live. I've gone years without watching it in my life, but for the most part, like, I'm 44. Saturday Night Live is 46. So, like, every single Saturday since birth at 11:30, I've had something to watch if I wanted it. So I love the program. And there was that character that Tom Hanks did. It was, I'll find a pic if you haven't seen it. It was David S. Pumpkins, and he's like, any questions? And it's just so silly and stupid. Like, I don't know, it's one of those things where I don't know why it's funny, but I find it funny. Like, it's funny because I can't figure it out. So David S. Pumpkins had a little animated Halloween special. So we sat down to watch it. And I mean, I had high hopes for it, and it wasn't all that great, but whatever. So nevertheless, it was like on at, like, let's say it was on at 8, right? So by 8:02, we'd started to watch. And I honestly, I have to tell you, I don't remember what it was about. Like, I don't remember what started it. But we were sitting there, and he made a comment to me, something to the effect of, like, my intelligence. You know, like, because I was talking about David S. Pumpkins and the sophistication of comedy, and like how sometimes it's so stupid it's funny because it's very smart and whatever. And he said something to the effect of how, like, you know, I like to walk around talking about how much I know because I really don't know anything, like that kind of thing. And I'm paraphrasing like crazy because I don't remember how it went. But all I know is that it became an argument. And so I was like, I can't even stand in this house anymore. Like, I just went outside to the driveway and played with my phone for like half an hour. And while playing with my phone, I opened the notes section of my phone and I wrote what I couldn't text him, what I couldn't text to anybody else. Sometimes I use the notes section of my phone to write out how I feel because I can't post it on social media or tell anybody because I'll get in trouble. So I just write it out as if I've texted it so that I, like, get it out of my brain. So I wrote in my notes section like a big paragraph about like how he doesn't understand that he's the problem, and you know, the only reason why he's knocking my intelligence is because he knows that it's superior to his own, and you know, and isn't that par for the course for a person who, you know, spends their life telling people what to do and what to know and all he was. And I just launched into this diatribe on my phone and sat outside in the driveway, like, just writing this and like just like trying to find the will within me not to go back into the house and whack him with a frying pan. And like, you know, just I was just enraged. Like, I couldn't even breathe correctly. I was so smart. Like, I don't even think I actually breathed. I think I just held it in for half an hour. And so I went back inside. He pretended nothing was wrong. I pretended nothing was wrong. And I had missed David S. Pumpkins. And later on, in the bathroom, because I had to hide when I used my phone because he thought I was like texting other people or whatever. He was routinely jealous. I amended the note section that I made and wrote one last thing. I wrote something to the effect of, I deleted it a long time ago. I wrote, the fact that all this is true is not even as offensive as the fact that I wasted half an hour being angry at this person and he made me miss David S. Pumpkins. I'd prefer to watch David S. Pumpkins rather than even be in the same room with him. You know, like, basically it's a shame that this fight made me miss David S. Pumpkins. And that's the third sign. Hi there, it's Editing Linda. See? Now, here's the thing. I don't know that I explained myself correctly. Basically, what I'm saying in this segment is the fact that I was so upset about the fight that I was like, kind of like, it too, like, you made me miss David S. Pumpkins too. Like, David S. Pumpkins means more to me than you. Any question? I told you it was silly. Now, okay, the fourth sign that I shouldn't have gotten married. was, well, it was something that's in my head. He didn't do anything here. So he moved, right? This is what happened. He was supposed to move to California. He sold his home and he found a new one, and that's great, and it's a nice place. And, everything was fine there. I think that was actually a really smart move for him. And so he called me up and told me the details of, like, we have to pack this and do that, whatever. And he told me that his flight, like his final time to go, like to officially move, like bring his cats and move to California, was going to be on December 6th. So that was, I think it was like a Tuesday or something. So I was like, oh, awesome. So I went into the calendar of my phone. And the first thing I did, like literally the first thing I did when I heard December 6th, was I looked in the calendar app of my phone and I counted how many Saturdays were there from now until December 6th. I counted that there were 7. And I practically cried with joy, and I immediately called my mother and I told her the good news. I told her that I only had to appear at his house 7 more times. And I counted them down. I made a little counter in my phone. And my phone seems to be getting a lot of action today in this video. Nevertheless, I made a countdown of how many times, and 7 became 6, became 5, and so forth. And my final one was December 2nd. And before I left, I took pictures because I wanted to, well, that's the rest of this story. Why I was counting them down and why I was so eager that there be 7 and then 6 and then 5 is because I was getting increasingly incapable of going to someone's home every Saturday night and having my character assassinated at all costs, being ashamed of every word that came out of my mouth, weighing each one of them, not being able to be anything even resembling my true self, and when I did, facing the consequences. I was not ready to continually blow smoke up the ass of a person who was doing wrong things and yet couldn't have the decency to tell me when I'd done something right. I didn't want to be called names. I didn't want to be told that I was flaky and immature when quite the opposite was true. I didn't want my physical person to be subjected to critiques. I didn't want my physical person. I didn't want our physical relationship, if you catch my drift, to be used as a weapon or as a point. Like we'd had that situation too, where it was a bargaining chip, to say the least. And I'm sure that younger viewers are watching this, so I'm not going to get too technical about the physical act, but there were troubles there that were chiefly mental. And so there was that problem. And so I just wasn't about to do that. I couldn't do it anymore. I could do it 7 more times. And if you told me that I had to go for an 8, if you said, oh, I got the date wrong, I couldn't go. Like, I couldn't go. It's kind of like that thing where, like, you ever have a Friday and, like, everyone at your job or your school is like, woohoo, it's Friday. But for some reason that Friday's extra special. You're like, man, if today wasn't Friday, I don't know if I can go on. That's how I felt. I felt like if there had been another Saturday, like if there was one more on the list, I couldn't do it. And I'd be more than happy to make another video explaining some of the verbal abuses that I received every Saturday night, and also daily on the phone and on FaceTime. But I'll have to keep that separate because this video has to go on. So now, the 5th and final sign. California. Ladies and gentlemen, this sign is an actual sign, like from above, okay? So, Christmas Day, 2017. My stepdaughter and I were to meet at JFK and fly to his home. So we did. I spent Christmas with my mother. It was her first Christmas without her husband. I went, I had a very nice time. I would have stayed with my mother all day instead of getting on a damn plane. But when you're married to people, you have to go see them on Christmas. You see how I'm using the phrase have to. It was like I was taking an exam, It was like I had to go to the dentist. I didn't want to get on that plane. In fact, most of the plane trip, I cried. And I was not sitting next to my stepdaughter, and that was actually really good because I didn't want her to see that I was crying. And a lot of times I would put on my glasses, even if I didn't need them at the moment, because I found that putting on my glasses almost hides my tears as long as they're not too severe. I've learned that over the years because I've had to, because I've had things to cry about. So nevertheless, It was awful, and we got there, and the entire trip was an abomination. It was assassination of my character. Again, it was basically everything that happens in Long Island in California. And here's the point I want to make to you, which is that I assumed that this would change him. And I don't think people can change like that, like, oh, I'll change him. I don't mean that. I mean that I thought he'd change. I thought that if he rid himself of some of the baggage that he had in his life where he was living, that he himself would be happier, and that his happiness would turn him into a better man. Like that he wouldn't need to beat up on me verbally because he wouldn't feel the need to beat up on himself. Like he would be better in his own life, if you catch my drift. So I went, and I noticed that quite the opposite was true. If possible, he was even more critical. He was even more abusive. Again, I would be more than happy to give examples in a next video, but there's the case. And so it all culminated. I spent most of my time on that trip lying in his bed pretending to be sleeping, meanwhile texting everybody I knew how I had to get out. Finally, and this is the two things I want to bring up. There's one point that's kind of scary, and another point that's the sign from above. So, the scary one. So, I have to cut the trip short. I was supposed to fly home on New Year's Day and miss a day of work. I didn't want to do that. I couldn't be there any longer. So I called my mother, and she lent me the money because I didn't have it in my account because it had just been Christmas, to change my ticket and fly home on the day before New Year's Eve. I told him that it was best for me to do that because my mother couldn't spend New Year's alone and so forth. I explained the reasons for going home, and they said, you have to understand, and he was like, no, he wasn't letting me, okay? There was no permission to do so. And I honestly, I was trapped in his house. I don't drive a car. He has a car. I didn't know how I was going to get to the airport. Would he let me go? I was a little bit afraid of that, actually. But nevertheless, I told him, I have to. This is my family. With a dead pair of eyeballs on me that looked kind of freaky, he said, they're not your family anymore. I'm your family now. Now, I accept the fact that when you get married, you envelop a family. I know that you absorb a new family, right? But the thing is, you don't replace one family with the other, you just glue them all together, okay? You're my husband. That doesn't make my mother not my mother. That doesn't make my cousin not my cousin. I've just inherited a new family member. If I had had a baby, I would have had a new family member, you see? You don't erase one to get the other. You add it all up together. It's a big family salad, okay? So he's making it sound like I had to choose an entree, you know what I'm saying? And I chose my family. I chose my sanity. I chose my mother. I chose my house. I chose my dog. I chose my best friend. I chose people who love me for real. I chose people who didn't make me feel the way that he made me feel. I chose life, and I chose the end. And I have to tell you that I really honestly did not trust until the doors closed behind my stepdaughter and myself at the airport on December 30th. And I saw his car drive away. I didn't trust that I was going to get home. I didn't think I was going to come out. I thought I'd be stuck in that house with the orange blanket that I laid under forever. I really did. Now, the sign from above. So one of the beautiful things about that particular vacation, it was actually really nice that day. It was great. It was on December 29th, the day before I flew. We went to San Francisco, a place that I've always wanted to be. And I actually got to stand at the corner of Haight and Ashbury. And there's a picture of me holding, holding my finger up to the sign. And it said, and I put it on social media saying 50 years too late, but I'm here. And and I went into cool stores, and I saw the big pair of legs at the Poseidon, and we went to Alice's restaurant, and I bought a cap and a tea, and it was great. The tension between us was horrific, but gosh darn it, if San Francisco wasn't the coolest thing ever, right? I had a bang up time, and I can't wait to go back. Nevertheless, my stepdaughter and my ex-husband go into a store on Haight Street. I can't believe I'm even saying that sentence. I love Haight Street. And I'm like, hey man, I'm going to duck out and I'm going to call my mother if you don't mind. I'm going to, you guys do it. I'm going to hang out here and take a break. He said, okay. So I'm talking to my mother about how I can't wait to come home tomorrow and this is the best thing I've ever done and I can't wait to get the hell out of here and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm going to be free soon, I use the word free often. I said, I'm going to get my freedom back. I'm going to reclaim my freedom. I said free or freedom a lot in the conversation. So I hit end. and I'm going to go inside and meet them. I look up at the building. I kid you not. It has the address painted on it. I'm going to insert the picture here because it's unbelievable. And it was a butterfly. Any person who ever met me knows how I feel about the butterfly. Any person who ever met me knows how I feel about Someone Saved My Life Tonight by Elton John. Butterflies are free to fly. Anybody who knows me knows how I may appreciate my freedom. How many more is anybody who knows me sentences can I inject into this video? But basically, I think you get my point. And so I hung up and I was like, I'm gonna be free soon, whatever, click, right? Look up, see like the bloody, bloody, blah, Hate Street, and the butterfly. I hadn't seen it before. I was standing right in front of that butterfly, and I believe in signs. And I was thinking about things all day, like how cool it would have been if my dad were around for me to call him up and say, guess what, man, I'm at Alice's restaurant, because he's the one who taught me the song. And how, like, I couldn't wait to get home and take my rings off and be with my dog and, like, you know, watch The Twilight Zone in peace on New Year's Eve instead of sitting there and pretending to like Black Mirror with my ex-husband in his house, you know. I couldn't believe it. I saw that butterfly and I knew. So, to make a long story short, we woke up, we got on the plane, we sat there. My back hurt the entire time. There was a little dog. Normal events on a plane. And then I landed in New York, and it was like, I think it was like 8 degrees or something. You know, it was like ridiculous. And I remember I was wearing Vans because I'd been in California, and I was like, oh my God, let's go. And I got into the cab, and I got home on December 30th at about like a little after midnight. And so I guess that would mean the 31st, right? So about 12:30 I got in. I had to pee. I had bags with me, whatever. I didn't stop to do anything. I didn't take my coat off. I didn't pee. I didn't look at my dog. I didn't do anything. The first order of business I did when I got into my house, like the first thing, as soon as my bags were not in my hand, I took my rings off, put them in a little box that I have on my bedroom stand, and with seashells on, and I was done. It was amazing. Now, he didn't know we were done. We had to have the conversation later. In fact, we didn't speak on this for another 2 weeks. But the thing is, and we didn't speak for another 2 weeks either. But the thing is that these were the signs. And so when you put it all together, what you could possibly have to complain about is beyond me, he said. I'm going to go to California instead of going with you to your father's funeral. Hey, that's totally fine. Okay? You know, insult my intelligence and make me miss David S. Pumpkins. And, you know, make me sit there and count down the 7 times more I have to come to your house because I'm getting kind of tired of being there and having my entire, like, sanity and character be in danger. And then California, I'd like you to know that I made notes on my computer for this video to make sure that I stuck to my story. Number 5 literally says, California trip, that's it. I didn't even need to make notes because whenever I tell people who know me, California trip, they're like, well, yeah. You know, I'm not going to get into any more. I'm not going to tell you how he told me that that was my fault. I'm not going to explain the conversations we had about, like, lawyers or payment or our joint phone plan or anything like that because it's not really my I don't need to. It's not my story to tell, you know. But yeah, and I'm divorced now, and it actually came true in 2018. I was painting my bedroom when and watching the Jersey Shore family reunion when a guy knocked at my door, and he was serving me the papers. And then the Christmas season, 1 year almost to the day that I had told him, you know, like that I flew home, I opened my mail. And I received 2 awesome things in it. One was a check for $654 of unclaimed funds from the state of New York. I was like, yay, Christmas! And my divorce papers. It came in the same batch of mail. I don't know which one I was more excited for, to tell you the truth. And, I mean, there's my story. I'm just going to start talking in a ramble now, so I guess I better end this video. But I guess the takeaway here is that this isn't supposed to be how marriage is. Like, you know, you're not supposed to be overjoyed that your husband skips out on your father's funeral. You're not supposed to be counting down the days until they get on a plane just so you could feel free. You're not supposed to openly cry tears of joy on Hate Street in San Francisco, when you look up and see a butterfly and know that that's a sign from the universe and your dad and so forth, that you're going to be okay because you're going to be free. You're not supposed to be walking around looking for painted butterflies on hate streets to tell you your future. Your future is supposed to be with your loved one because you're supposed to love them and be married to them, right? Guess what? I'm out. And I don't care how callous that sounds. If anyone knew one iota of the things that I've left out of these videos, you would take me to dinner. You would get me a butterfly in a jar. You would agree that I have every right to sing Someone Saved My Life Tonight by Elton John out loud and say that sweet freedom whispered in my ear, and I'm a butterfly, and butterflies are free to fly. I have nothing further. So how about some different content after this? I think I've spoken a great deal about my marriage, and I think that you guys get the point. Now, I will leave it up to you. If you want to know the rest, if you want to know some of the emotional abuse things, if you want me to make a list, check it twice, like that's fine, okay? But, I mean, it's all good. Maybe I'll put a poll on Instagram and see what needs to be done next. But I think that my story stands. So, I appreciate your sticking by me. I've worn my Honeymoon Avenue shirt today for that reason. I don't know if you noticed in the previous video, I wore the one that says "Keep Me in Your Orbit," but from the song NASA. Give you the whole world. I'm in need space. Anyway, I've talked too long. Thank you for bearing with me, and keep this stuff in mind. If you are counting down the amount of times you need to see your husband or wife, you need to not be married. I learned that the hard way, but at least I got to learn it in San Francisco. I guess that's my moral.